Hi, sorry it's been such a long time since my last vlog. It's actually, 1 week was cancelled because my therapist was ill, and the second week was cancelled because his daughter was ill, and he was very apologetic about it being so long since my last therapy session, but hey, these things happen. So this session was on Monday, and it was the 4th session of interpersonal therapy. So it's the end of the sort of introductory section of interpersonal therapy. So what we did mainly in this session was getting all the information together about what my depression, anxiety, sort of what it entails, what sort of symptoms I get, and when I think it started, or when this episode of depression and that started, what the sort of reasons why, like what triggered it, that kind of thing, if there's any specific events or something like that that caused, well, just sort of triggered the depression or the anxiety. I actually have a copy of what he wrote about me, which is like the formulation of my depression and sort of where we're going from here, and there's quite a lot in there actually. It's interesting, and near the end of the session he read this out to me and told me to stop him if there are any bits that I thought were inaccurate, like he'd sort of got the wrong end of the stick with. And there was a focus on when I think things like my anxiety are worse, and I mean, it could be for different reasons. I have different types of anxiety. I've got like generalised, got some social anxiety, agoraphobia and OCD, so I'm quite an anxious person. But those with anxiety, he thought that my anxiety was worse when I was alone, but it's actually, I think it's worse when I'm with people, especially when it comes to like group situations. Like that's why I don't go to any sort of like support group things in person, because I wouldn't be able to cope with a room full of people and sort of sitting down listening to the person who takes a session. I just want to escape basically. So unfortunately I've not been able to do any sort of group sessions. I mean, anxiety, I don't think it's worse like when I'm around people I know, like my parents and that, you know, I'm used to them, I live with them, that kind of thing. I don't think it matters whether I'm around them or not. My anxiety, sort of general anxiety, tends to be about the same. It's more about what's going on in my life, I suppose. I think I do get like anxiety and depression. I do get it where it comes on just randomly, but most of the time I think it's in reaction to something, in response to something. So particularly at the moment it's my ESA reassessment. I think I mentioned it in my last vlog. I've now sent off my ESA 50, which is the limited capability for work questionnaire. I filled it as much as I could, I gave as much information as I could, and checked through it about 1,000,000 times. So I've sent it off and I'm just waiting to hear back, and of course that's on my mind every day. Like, I can focus on other things, but if my anxiety is particularly bad, it's only really that I can focus on, even though there's nothing I can do at the moment. So I've already done the form, I've already sent it off, and all I can do is wait now. And then I was talking to my therapist about this, and I was saying how I'm trying to think of any work that I can do, if there's any like online work from home stuff, but I honestly don't think I could commit to any particular time, and I wouldn't be able to be reliable. I mean, I struggle with being reliable for these sessions. and it's only like 50 minutes to an hour, so it's not really much time, but for me, for a spoonie, it is a lot of time, because a lot can happen in an hour for us. And at the time I was struggling with my physical health anyway, so I was really tired. Tired's not really the word, it's exhausted. And I hadn't been sleeping well because my pain had been really bad, which I think is because partly the extra stress from the CSA reassessment, and also with the weather being a bit colder, that really affects me really badly. So I'm digressing a bit, I think, again. So we talked about so this is a session where we sort of summarise what formulates my depression and my anxiety, mainly my depression. And so when it started, this particular episode of depression, as he called it, he thinks started around university time, and that was around the time that I started getting physically ill. But of course I reiterated that it wasn't the mental health problems that came first, it was the physical health problems, and the mental health problems partly were triggered by realising I was chronically ill, or there was something going on and I didn't have a diagnosis, so it was just a load of symptoms that people wouldn't believe. Yeah. And of course, a couple of vlogs ago I talked about a particular relationship I'd been in that I found later on was really controlling and quite abusive, and it's something that I'm trying not to think too much about because I don't want to be crying on here. I'm just trying to be matter of fact about what went on in this last session. So yeah, that was one of the reasons. It's also either exacerbated or triggered the depression, and I suppose the anxiety as well. It was he was talking about the medication that I'm on. So that's sertraline, and that's 200 milligrams. So as far as I'm aware, that's like the highest dose. And I think I do get some sort of benefit from it. I mean, it's not exactly going to cure, but I think it at least takes the edge off. You know, it makes life a bit more doable. You know, it's not quite so intense. I still get those times, but not as much as I used to. So that really is something good. I am rambling a bit. I was trying to go in like sort of a chronological order, but I'm sort of flipping back from my sessions to what I'm worried about, just back and forth. But I just wanted to take back to when I was talking about being worried about ESA, my reassessment, and saying that I'm not ready for work, and I thought he was going to say, come on, give it a try, you know, like challenge your anxiety or something, but it seems he now realises just how bad my physical problems are, and I suppose how serious my mental health problems are. So he actually said that I shouldn't put so much pressure on myself, and that I'm definitely like not fit for work. So I'm hoping that if everything goes to pot and I have to appeal, maybe I can get some letter or some sort of support from him to back up my claim and say, look, I'm not lying, I really am this ill. And so it's not just my word against theirs as such. But I'm really hoping it doesn't get to the point of appeal, because last time I remember, I mean, I wasn't prepared in the slightest, but it went all the way to tribunal, and it was pretty scary, you know. I felt like I was on trial or something. And the doctor at the tribunal was, well, I wouldn't want to be their patient. They were horrible. They were very judgmental. They didn't believe a word I said. They were quite condescending, you know. So yeah, I don't want to have to go through that again. I'm hoping they take notice of what I've said in the forums. So yeah, that's a big thing to do with my anxiety at the moment. Yeah, we're talking about the kind of mood swings that I get. It's one of the main symptoms, I suppose. So I can, if I'm feeling quite anxious, I can swing from sort of being really anxious and being sort of freezing, being sort of silent, not being able to focus, and I can flip from that to being like irritable, even angry, where I just want to scream at people. And at those times I tend to sort of take myself out of the room so I can just be by myself, like take away all the noises and distractions, and just try and calm down as much as I can, and hopefully be, well, less of a bitch when I come back into the living room or whatever. Because I think it's best if I'm not around people when I'm like that, because I can be really, really snappy, and I think I can be really horrible like that. Try not to be, but sometimes it's really, really hard to control how I react to that. And as well as like the mood swings and the sort of overwhelming amounts of emotions I can feel all at once, I get days where I get quite numb. It's like I don't really know how I'm feeling. I mean, there might be a little bit of anxiety or something, but generally it's like I can't connect to those emotions. It's like I know that generally I feel that way. It's really hard to explain with that. I still try and understand it myself, but I can't deny the fact that I feel quite numb at those times. So he puts the other symptoms that I get, like, I don't do it so much these days. It's like I can't, but I get like crying spells. Sometimes that's just my way of dealing with things, like angry, upset, whatever. It's like it all builds up, and rather than like yelling and screaming, sometimes I just cry, and I hate it, because I used to be teased about crying so much. I was called a crybaby and stuff like that, and I guess I learnt to hate that I did that, and sort of hate myself a little bit for doing that, as if I couldn't control it. But it's like with that, the more you try to stop, the more it happens, and it does make you really frustrated with yourself. It doesn't help to try and stop, really. And you know, there's nothing wrong with crying. It's a perfectly natural human experience, and it's just our way of releasing how we're feeling at that time. And this shouldn't be such a bad view of it, really. Also went through sort of the other depressive symptoms that I get, like feeling guilty, feeling worthless, hopeless, being quite forgetful and confused, which also ties in with the anxiety. I mean, when you're getting very overwhelmed, it's easy to forget things, it's easy to get confused about things. And also it doesn't help that that's a problem I get with the fibromyalgia. I get what's called brain fog. I've explained it in previous vlogs. Yeah, that's confusion, not remembering words. Like in a sentence you might forget some simple words, or you'll use the wrong words, or you could say a sentence that makes absolutely no sense and you only realise afterwards when the person you're talking to gives you a weird look. Yeah. So yeah, I hate how there's these parallels between my physical health problems and my mental health problems, and it's figuring out whether it's the mental health or the physical health that's causing that. Okay, so the next thing, went through development, and yeah, of course, it says the current symptoms were at university. Sort of, it was such a change from how I was before. So, okay, call it like most of my first year of university I was really happy. I'd had this big change, big fresh start, went off to university, and as far as I was aware there was no one I knew who was going to that university. I just wanted to get away, sort of scrub my life clean, I suppose you can call it, because I was sort of free from this bullying, and I was really optimistic. I wanted to be a psychologist. I felt like things were possible. This was before I learned about what the jobs market was like, and before I got into politics, so I was a lot more optimistic back then. It seemed like things were possible, and I made loads of friends, felt really popular, I was happy, I was doing things I enjoyed, and you know, I think I was doing alright at my degree as well. So yeah, so going from that to like this depression, it was like what my therapist said. It was like I'd become the opposite of myself, of what I was when I was all confident and that. And I think it hit me hard, I suppose, because it was like I'd lost my sense of self. Like when I think of who I am as a person, the confident, bubbly, friendly person, that's who I feel I am, really. But it's my mental health problems sort of hold me back from being myself, and it can get to a point where I'm not even sure who I am, and you know, I have problems with my identity and stuff. And that was also something I was explaining to the therapist, which I think he found quite interesting. Yeah, so obviously I'm not going to go through it in details, but there were a few things that happened that led to these feelings, and as time went on, because I didn't know whether it was depression, I thought, okay, I'm just going through some crap, I'm not doing great, and yeah, I'm just going through a tough time, and I'm reacting to it how anybody would, whether mentally ill or not. So I didn't recognise for ages that what I was feeling was actually depression, and also the beginnings of anxiety. So it got to quite a bad point before I actually started asking for help. And even then I wasn't sure if I was ill enough to go and get help, because I didn't think that I was getting these feelings consistently enough. Because some days I'd think that I was sort of okay, I was coping. So I thought that it had to be every day before I got help for it. A lot of the themes my therapist said were to do with the depression, and that he thinks that there's a lot of things like control and loss, grief, that kind of thing. And that was something I hadn't really realised until he pointed it out. And I suppose I didn't really want to focus on it. Thinking about all that's gone on, it's overwhelming, and it just makes me feel a whole lot worse, even though I do have to face this stuff if I want to move on or get some sort of closure or just deal with it better, you know. So then he was going on to, when I did start asking for help, it was CBT that I went through, which didn't really work for me, and the fact that I was self-harming at the time, but I didn't really talk about it. I wasn't sure if it was bad enough to qualify as self-harming. I'm not going to go through what I do, but yeah, I've learnt now that it is, you know, and it's not good that I do it, but this is just my way of coping sometimes. Okay. With CBT, what we discussed, that we found was that, and he's written it here, you felt as though you wanted to please the therapist so much you again dismissed your own needs and never fully recovered from the initial onset of depression and anxiety. So it's like with CBT, it's very homework based, and there's set tasks that you do and stuff. So in it being called homework, I guess I thought back to school where I'd be really worried if I didn't do my homework. I had to make sure I did it like every week and handed it in on time. So I suppose I reverted back to that, even though it's something that's supposed to help me and that I'm supposed to do for me. I was just doing the homework, going through the motions just to please the therapist, and I didn't want them to think that they'd sort of failed with helping me. So I suppose I downplayed how I was feeling, you know, that I made out that I was improving, but I wasn't really. It was just I managed to do the tasks, but I was just going through the emotions. I wasn't feeling any real benefit from it. It was just doing a task, that's it. And of course it just didn't seem to fit me. Like, it wasn't the way I thought, really. And one thing the therapist said was, with CBT, it's more about the thoughts and like the negative thoughts and stuff. But with interpersonal therapy, as well as obviously your relationships with people, it's more about the sort of feelings that you have, and that seems to be more at the forefront for me. I talk about how I feel a lot, so maybe this is why this fits me a bit better so far. Right, yeah, there's a few pages of this. So it's got things like vulnerability factors, protective factors, current episode, that kind of thing. So I think with vulnerability factors there might also be talking about the current risks of that. But you do not think that you had any serious episodes of depression before this current episode. But as a child you were bullied at school, and you describe being bullied and controlled by people, and you're so distressed that you would self-harm at the time. You'd feel angry with yourself and frustrated, and this was a way of sort of letting out your anger rather than directing it at the people who made me upset and angry. I turned it to myself, so it was like I was punishing myself for what was going on. And I said it's like I used to get really frustrated with myself for not sticking up for myself. Like, there'd be the odd time where I'd shout I'd snap at the person who was doing it. I'd just be like at the end of my tether, but generally I tended to just put up with it, and I didn't really stand up for myself, and I hated myself for it. So this was my way of turning it back to myself and releasing those feelings without hurting anybody else. I was just hurting myself, which obviously isn't good. And I was talking about the family situation, any caring responsibilities, stuff like that. Protective factors, so it's having a support network, having friends in real life, friends like face to face that I see, friends online, family, that kind of thing. So mentioned a few people that I said I was quite close to, and yeah, the focus is on trying to meet up with friends a bit more, or at all, because I very rarely do, and it's partly the anxiety, and also what I was mentioning, I get really worried that I'm not going to know what to say. Like, I'm not going to be funny, I'm just going to be really boring, and I'll just be listening to them, and the conversation will fizzle out really quickly. I just feel this responsibility to be contributing and starting conversation, and I don't know if I'm very good at that. I mean, I ramble a lot, and that tends to be my way of starting conversation, which isn't always good. So there's that, and because of worrying about whether I'll have anything to say, I and also the moods that I have. I worry that I'm just going to be a very boring friend to be around, that I'm just going to bring everyone else down, which is the last thing I want to do. So it's like I'm sort of protecting other people by keeping away from them. So I'm hurting myself too, and holding myself back because I think that they can do better than me or something. It's like I see myself as inferior. I always think of my friends as such better people than me. You know, they've got better personalities, better morals, they know a bit more than me, something like that. So yeah, I always put myself down as the person who's learning from them, who's looking up to them, and is the one who's wrong if I disagree with them, even though that might not be the case. But I can't help how I feel about that. I have quite a low opinion of myself. Yeah, that's protective factors. So current episode, the main areas that the therapist has picked up on that we are hopefully going to work on with the next sessions. There's the grief, so it's any loss of people in my life, the termination, you know, it's a form of loss. Isolation, he says I'm very isolated because most of my friends are online, so I don't really meet them, so I don't really have a lot of people round face to face that I can talk to. And of course there's people who are close, but I suppose I'm shutting them out a bit because I'm trying to protect them. I don't want to make them worry about me. I don't want to bring them down as well, so I find it hard to really just let myself talk about stuff and let myself be the person who's cared for and protected, I suppose. Maybe I feel I don't deserve that or something. So there's the thing about how I communicate with others, so I suppose that is about shutting myself out and stuff. Yeah, so this role transition, that's the adjustment from being a sort of healthy, confident, outgoing person to this person with a lot of physical health problems who isolates himself a lot. And he said it's like the opposite, really. And it's something I don't like to think about it. Now I've said that before, but I suppose I hate the way I am, and it's hard to accept. It's like I so want to go back to the person I was, but obviously with less ignorance, with less naivety, because I did make a lot of mistakes and stuff. So I'd like to be back to being the confident person, and I'd love to go back to being the healthy person, but with, I suppose, the knowledge that I have now and the morals that I have now. But you can't turn back the clock, so it's about working around the kind of problems I have now. And I suppose I'm still in the process of accepting things, accepting how things are, accepting the things I can't change, and working on the things that I hopefully can change. So it's trying to find that person again, trying to get myself to being that person, if that makes sense. And so yeah, I hope that made sense. So main themes, that my depression and that. So I think we've pretty much got an idea of how it's formulated, what kind of things set it off, and possibly how we're going to go from here. And he said again, if I feel that if the themes are wrong, or if the interpersonal therapy doesn't seem to be working for me, it's fine, you know, anytime if I need to I can tell him that it's not really working out. So but it's still quite early days. We've only just done the introductory part, so we've not really done the therapy part just yet. So I've said, well, so far I'm happy with it. I get on with the therapist. I feel with him I've been the most honest. You know, if I'm having a bad day, I'm not going to hide it. I'm going to let him know. And yeah, I can really open up, and I think that's a really good sign. So hopefully that bodes well for the rest of the therapy, and I'm sort of cautiously optimistic, I suppose you can say, about the rest of it. So I will definitely be vlogging more often, and when for each of the sessions. I still have about 12 more sessions to go, so this will be quite a long sort of vlog series, I should call it. So yeah, my next vlog though, unless I want to talk about anything else not therapy related, which I might do, my next vlog about therapy in particular is going to be sort of around the start of January. So if I don't record a video before then, I'm going to say have a lovely Christmas and New Year, and I will see you soon.